Hello, I'm Annabelle Brody-Smith, Communications Director of the Association of Investment Companies. It's only been a few years since all eyes were on the biotechnology and healthcare sector during the COVID-19 pandemic. But more recently, the investment trusts in the sector have had mixed fortunes. However, the biotechnology and healthcare sector is up 3% over the past year, compared to 11% for the average investment company. And the biotechnology and healthcare sector is trading at a significant average discount of 15%, which is wider than the average investment trust, which is on a 10% discount. Now, despite this, biotechnology and healthcare has performed well over the long term, with a share price total return of 110% over 10 years. The sector was also tipped for success by managers in the LSE's Fund Management poll at the end of last year, with 15% expecting it to be the best performing sector in 2024. So what is the outlook for the biotechnology and healthcare sector? Is it due a recovery? Today, I'm delighted to be joined by three biotechnology and healthcare investment company managers. Darke, who's the portfolio manager of Bellevue Healthcare Trust, Marek Poszepczynski, portfolio manager of International Biotechnology Trust, and Geoff, co-manager of Biotech Growth Trust. Right, on to the questions. After a challenging time, is the biotechnology and healthcare sector coming back? And we're going to start off with you, Brett.
Thank you, Annabelle. Yes, I think when you look back at 2023, this was the worst year for relative performance of the healthcare index versus, the broader world global equity market. So, when we look back at the sort of the drives of that, we feel that they're very unfair and unwarranted. And as such, we think that this sector is definitely due a catch up. And in particular, the smaller and mid cap end has been very much left behind by the recent market moves. So we're more focused on that particular part of it.
Thank you, Brett. How about you, Geoff? Do you think it's due a comeback right now?
So we absolutely believe that biotech is due for a recovery. We did see a significant drawdown, especially in small and mid-cap biotech starting in 2021. And that was really driven by the increase in interest rates we've seen in the United States over the past few years as the Fed has raised interest rates to combat inflation in the United States. Fortunately, those interest rate headwinds appear to be abating. So the Fed has telegraphed that it is done raising interest rates at the current cycle. And they actually expect rate cuts to materialize by the end of this year. And that will, of course, be a tailwind for the sector. But that drawdown that we saw over the past 2 to 3 years really drove absolute valuations for the sector to unprecedented lows, with a lot of companies actually trading at market caps below the net cash on their balance sheet. So we think the sector is definitely overdue for a recovery, and we have seen some strong performance since last fall.
Well, that is encouraging. Marek, what do you think? Do you agree? Is it due for a comeback?
Yeah, I totally agree. And if you look at valuations, fundamentally, they're at all-time lows depending on which metrics you look at. And cash, a lot of companies were valued below cash just a couple of months ago. Fundamental, this is a high growth sector, and we are at the same levels basically as we were 5 years ago. And we have gone through 3 years of consolidation in the sector. The productivity has improved, and a lot of companies have been focusing more and more on their key products. So yes, I believe the sector is due for a recovery.
Excellent. So it's due for recovery. So then where are you finding opportunities? Geoff, let's start with you.
So honestly, we are finding investment opportunities across a wide range of therapeutic areas and drug development technologies. We do think that the small and mid-cap biotech companies are more undervalued than the large-cap companies. So our trust does have an emphasis on that end of the biotech universe. But we're very optimistic about the fundamentals of the industry and really finding opportunities in a lot of different areas.
Great. Now, so small and mid-cap are the opportunities. Marek, do you agree? Where are you finding opportunities?
Yeah, I will totally agree in the small and mid-cap space. And if you look at the small cap space, you have also the optionality that some of these companies might be acquired with often renders a big premium. But also in specific therapeutics area like the rare diseases, oncology, and the central nervous system has been focus for larger companies to plug their pipeline gaps.
Right, so some specific areas of opportunity for you. And Brett, where are you finding the opportunities?
Like Marek and Geoff have said, I'm going to repeat, small and mid cap is definitely the most attractive area in terms of size. Obviously, being a broader healthcare investment trust, whilst we see opportunities within the therapeutic space, we're also finding quite a lot of interesting opportunities in other subsectors such as medtech, services, for example. So there's lots happening out there.
Okay, so it's all sounding very optimistic so far, but what are the challenges of investing in the biotech and healthcare? What are the key risks? Marek, let's start with you.
Yeah, I would say in my universe and how I view it is that you have the development risk, the clinical regulatory risk, which all companies have to go through. Then you have the commercial risk when you launch a drug. And having said that, you have the competitor risk. Will this drug be better or will you be superseded by someone else? And that's very important as well. Added to that is the political risks and the macro risk, which shows this is a complex industry, why it's so important to focus on having a portfolio.
Yeah, I can see there are a lot of risks. How about you, Brett? What do you think are the key risks and challenges?
I mean, I think exactly, as Marek said, regulatory risk, the commercial risk, but increasingly the reimbursement risk. Who is going to pay for these? Science and innovation is wonderful. The pace of science and innovation has never been so great. But who's ultimately going to end up paying? And at what price is society prepared to accept the latest innovation for what increment of benefit to health? So I think that is going to become an increasing focus going forward. But, as Marek said, having all of this, these risks lends itself more to a specialist manager to tackle this universe.
Right, yes. Well, I think you're right. Who is going to pay for all this healthcare as we all live much longer? And it's great that we're living longer, but obviously we're consuming rather a lot of expensive drugs and treatments. And Geoff, what do you think are the key risks at the moment?
So everything that's been said previously, so clinical development risk, commercial risk, macro risk in terms of interest rates, and then political risk in terms of what happens with drug pricing. I will say that the smaller companies, the emerging biotech companies, typically their valuations are really driven by one lead asset. And so frequently, if there's a critical event like a phase 3 clinical trial result or an FDA regulatory decision, that stock on that particular event could go down 80% or go up 100% on one of those events. So the individual stocks can be quite volatile. And it's important to manage the risk going into those particular events. But it's a very exciting sector. And overall, I think the sector is creating a lot of value for patients. So.
Absolutely. I mean, it is really an sector where you invest and you're actually doing good by your investment, by investing in these treatments, which are helping people live longer and have a better quality of life. Obviously, we've got a US election coming up this year. I'm wondering if the results will make any difference to the sector. Geoff, I know you're based in the States. What's your view on the US election?
So I think we should expect some election year campaign rhetoric about drug pricing from both candidates, both Trump and Biden this year. This is nothing unusual, but we think it's really going to be noise at the end of the day. So I think it's very, very difficult to pass any substantive drug pricing legislation, especially if there's a split government that arises after the November elections where no one single party controls both houses of Congress and the presidency. I would note that the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed in 2022 did have, as a part of that act, a clause with regards to Medicare price negotiation. So Congress has already implemented some drug pricing reform, and we think they've kind of ticked the box there, and it's very unlikely they'll return to that issue in the next several years.
Okay, so it sounds like it's pretty good. Brett, have you got any comments on the US election? Obviously, you've got a wider range of investments. Will it have any impact on those?
No, I think Geoff has sort of covered it all off from certainly a drug pricing point of view. The other sort of favourite topic is health insurance, access, pricing, and things like that. But again, Biden is the incumbent. Trump was the former occupant of the White House, so investors have a fairly good gauge, or they should at least, about what they have done and said whilst being president. And again, there will be lots of grandiose comments probably as part of the election campaign, but post-election, we don't see this either outcome having a particular impact on the sector.
Well, that is good. And Marek, obviously you've got all those, really favouring the small and mid-cap sector at the moment. We've seen a lot of M&A in that area. What do you think about the US election? Could that have any impact on these types of companies?
It's a very good question. It's very often during this election years you have a lot of rhetoric, but once this dust has settled, usually very little come out of it, because you have normally inertia in the US system that creates this. I would say probably not, but there will be pockets of turbulence probably when one of the candidates will say something that will create headlines and might affect the stock markets. That definitely will happen.
Yeah, well, we do seem to have candidates who have got a habit of saying things that create headlines. So I think you're quite right about that. I'm sure that's going to be true. I'd like to thank our managers very much for joining us today. It's been great to hear their views on the biotechnology and healthcare sector. I'd like to emphasize that we don't know what's going to happen in the future. Investment is for the long term, and it's important to have a well-balanced portfolio. If you're in any doubt, you should talk to a financial advisor. Thanks so much for watching today.